Good afternoon, everybody from Madrid. It's middle of the afternoon, the middle of a crisis, the middle of a pandemic, and also the middle of hopes and a conversation. Good afternoon, everybody from Madrid. It's middle of the afternoon, the middle of a crisis, the middle of a pandemic, and also His Excellency, the Ambassador of the United Arab Emirates in Spain. Majid Al-Suwaidi. Then we have in Rome, we have His Eminence, the Cardinal Peter Turkson. And then we have in Dubai, an intellectual and a diplomat, His Excellency Omar Gobash. We are going to talk and to tackle the issues and the ideas and their expertise, because we have excellent, and we have the honor of being able to talk to people who can have a way out, or at least an intellectual way of dealing with way outs. So first of all, let's pass the floor in this panel to our first Excellency, Mr. Majid Al-Suwaidi, as I said, the Ambassador of the United Arab Emirates in Spain. Please, sir.
Thank you, Angela. Dear Excellencies, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, let me start by thanking all of you for joining us today on such a special occasion. Last week, the world celebrated the first International Day for Human Fraternity. Ever since our foundation in 1971, our leaders have worked relentlessly to promote mutual understanding between different faiths and cultures. Thanks to their efforts, tolerance is a fundamental component of the UAE's identity. Today, over 200 nationalities coexist peacefully, and you can find over 40 churches, 2 Hindu temples, a Sikh temple, and a Buddhist temple in our country. Fostering tolerance and mutual understanding between different faiths does not just contribute to peaceful coexistence, it also makes us better as people. It broadens our knowledge and our culture, and it allows us to empathize with those who come from different backgrounds and traditions. The times we are living in are unprecedented and challenging, and it's all the more critical for us to build bridges between civilizations in times of hardship. This is exactly what His Holiness, the Pope Francis, and His Excellency Ahmed Al-Tayeb, Grand Imam of Al-Azhar, highlighted to the world on February 4th, 2019 in Abu Dhabi, when they signed the document on human fraternity for world peace and living together, a fundamental statement for mutual understanding and brotherhood between Islam and the Catholic Church. As Ambassador of the UAE to the Kingdom of Spain, I'm proud of the brave example our leadership have set to promote peace in our region and the world. The latest example of this being the development of the Abrahamic Family House, a great groundbreaking project that will bring together a mosque, a church, a synagogue, and an educational center in the same complex on Saadiyat Island in Abu Dhabi. While this project is the first of its kind, I believe that it's just the start of a journey for Muslims, Christians, and Jews to come together to exercise their faith in peace and fraternity. Today, we are excited to host a conversation between His Eminence Cardinal Peter Turkson and His Excellency Omar Gobash, and I thank them and our moderator, Angela Rodicio, for giving us their time for what I know will be a fantastic discussion. I hope this is just one of many discussions that we can all have within our communities, or even more importantly, at home, but for a global community united in its diversity and one that promotes peace, tolerance, and mutual understanding, and rejecting violence in all forms. I thank you for your time, and I'll pass over to you, Angela, for what I hope will be a fantastic conversation.
Inshallah. His Eminence, the Cardinal Peter Turkson from Ghana, has been a long-time advocate for natural and human ecology, as he denominates it, has always stood for the defense and promotion of the rights of the most unprivileged segments of the global population, And it's also really an advocate for environment protection. Is the prefect for the Department of the Service of International and Integral Human Development, and he is also one of the senior voices in the Vatican when it comes to the promotion of less privileged collectives throughout the world. His Eminence, it was the philosopher Aristotle who said that humans and humankind, we are all as different as equal. When in terms of progress, we are focusing on similarities, and in terms of regress, we are focusing on differences. How you deal and how you focus on the actual situation right now from your dicastery or ministry in the government?
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Ambassador. Thank you, Omar, and thanks to all of you, the government of the United Arab Emirates, for putting this together and for inviting us all, inviting me to share thoughts on a very significant and a very timely issues as this. It is already great that in 2019, after the visit of the Holy Father, Pope Francis, to the Emirates, and the signing of this document on universal fraternity, the United Nations picked this up and then established a World Day of Universal Fraternity, which the ambassador referred to. We celebrated just a few days ago on the 4th of September, on the 1st of February. So we're grateful for all of these movements, and of course we thank God who has made all of this possible, who has touched the hearts of all and made movements like this possible. Talking about building bridges, from over here, one cannot fail but recall how this language became current in the language of Pope Francis. It was in 2016, during the American elections, that during his visit to Mexico on the way back, somebody asked him about the decision of President Trump to build a wall. You remember that episode? And the Pope said that Christians should not be building walls, we should be building bridges. That's when it began. Then he carried on with this in 2018 during a meeting of a group here in Rome called the Sant'Egidio. And there the Pope said that the task of believers is to build bridges and to become artisans of peace. Christians and believers, you build bridges and you become artisans of peace. Because then he goes on to explain all of this to say that this is an invitation to create connections that lead to real meetings between people so that horizons are merged and that cultures are put together, and that we call to unite people and to bring people together. And he said for this, sometimes it may be important to heal the wounds of the past and to set ourselves new trajectories for the future. This is in his language, the way of building bridges. Okay, so we can, and that's that expression, build bridges. Build is to exercise labor, is to work. So building bridges require energy, it requires force, it requires some human labor, as it were. It's not something that just happens, it's something we need to work at. It's something that we need to pursue with energy, with enthusiasm and all of that. That's how we build anything. And this, for religious leaders, the Pope will say, because of this, every religious leader must be a solid bridge, and he must be a bridge of dialogue and a creative mediator of peace. That's what it is. And so when in 2019, the Pope visited, the Arab Emirates, and then with Sheikh Tayyip of Al-Aqsa, they signed this document. That was his way of pursuing this. But if the Pope so promotes bridge building as a way of bringing humanity together, I'd like briefly to respond to the fact that this has happened in human history before. When at the dawn of the century, globalization with the electronic systems fashioning and bringing us all together, we talked about global village. We talked about everybody coming together. But then it took Pope Benedict to say that we're becoming neighbors, we're coming together, but we have not yet become brothers. So we can be neighborly and we can be together, one to the other, but this doesn't necessarily make us brothers. And we should go one step further towards working to become brothers. And that's when we begin to care for one another. We begin to make the concerns of the other our own concerns and begin to touch where the other one is certain and all of that. So I think the initiative that was begun by these two religious leaders is to make us move from becoming neighbors to becoming brothers. And that is our point, the point of our conversation this afternoon. Thank you.
Thanks to you. His Excellency Omar Saif Gobash is now United Arab Emirates Assistant Minister for Culture and Public Diplomacy, but previously held the position of Ambassador to France, and even previously more, Ambassador to Russia almost for a decade. He's also a writer, Letters to a Young Muslim, in which he writes to his sons exploring the notion of his own faith, culture and society in the 21st century. He's a member too of the advisory body of the International Center for the Study of Radicalization at King's College London, which is one of the most exclusive places in the world for studying this spread of extremist narratives. I would like to ask His Excellency about this. In moments like this, the crisis, when everybody is like focusing on the doorstep, on their small worlds, how are you dealing with narratives focusing or having headlines on walls and just living and dealing with their own small worlds in this big, huge one?
Thank you so much for asking me the question, and thank you for having me on. And Your Eminence, if I could just apologize to you for having, I believe, canceled our first planned discussion a few weeks ago.
Apologies.
I just wanted to prepare myself properly for this occasion, and I wasn't ready at the time. So thank you. Okay. I actually think that what we are in the Emirates are doing is precisely what you've just said. We're actually focusing on the local scene because we believe that actually by taking what we're doing locally, we can then demonstrate that to our brothers and sisters across the region and demonstrate what can be done, because ultimately tolerance occurs at the local level. We don't have a problem being intolerant with people who are miles away. That's not the issue. It's whether we can actually live in a society of individuals bumping up against each other, particularly in this globalized world. The Emirates was essentially born out of a sense of live and let live, which is then translated into a tolerance of difference and otherness. We're 7 Emirates that were under the protection of the United Kingdom in the 60s. And in 71, we essentially were forced to make an agreement between each other. And these were tribes and leaders who had differences with each other. But in order to actually survive, they came together and made an agreement that allow us now to look at the Emirates as a remarkable example of tolerance. If you also think about it, coming out of the desert in the 1950s, there was an incredibly high rate of mortality. And there's a very famous story of Canadian missionaries who came to Abu Dhabi and set up a hospital, a small little clinic. There was pushback from some of the more aggressive men of the era, but the founder of the Emirates, Sheikh Zayed bin Sultan Al Nahyan, made sure that these missionaries were allowed to do their work and allowed to help children actually come into the world. And so it's understanding that we are actually all linked together in some way, and that nobody has the solution for all problems. We all need to deal with each other. That was quite clearly seen in the 1950s. And if you look at the Emirates today, we have 200 nationalities living here, very large communities in comparison with the local Emirati community. Over 80% of our population is foreign. And yet we have people who are working together and building together, even if their nations are at war with each other. In the Emirates, they come together and they work together because there is this very clear sense that we are all in a community called the Emirati community. And when we look at that example, we want to demonstrate that example of coexistence and cooperation to our region, which, as you all know, is not the most peaceful of regions. And so we think through that example we can do that. One further thing that I'd like to say is that it isn't just that example, it's leadership taking decisive steps forward to demonstrate a commitment to these values of openness and tolerance and diversity. And you have, as you know, the Abrahamic Family House, which is a combination of a church, a synagogue, and a mosque on one territory. We have the Pope Francis, who visited the Emirates, the first time a Catholic Pope visits the Arabian Peninsula. Again, sort of pushing at the traditional fundamentalist taboos on the subject of territory and the holiness of the territory. And I think probably the most important thing in the last few months was our recognition of Israel and a signing of a peace treaty with Israel. And essentially the political burial of anti-Semitism in our part, at least in our part of the Arab world. Extremely important demonstration of moral and ethical leadership. I hope that answers your question.
Well, yeah, and let's go to back to the his Eminence, the Cardinal Turkson. I mean, you have a young country. He is in a millenary institution. I mean, how can you go and and to make a common base for young people, for the new generations with these challenges that you have and you just mentioned?
It should not be difficult. The one thing that needs to be recognized is that you call a particular group of, somebody in the generational rank, you call them young people. And young people belong to that era, that phase of human life, that is the subject of education and formation. Okay, so formation and education is the thing that belongs to the youth, young people, helping them. So you help them as it were, prepare their future. You nurture their future for them or with them. And so this is the place and the role for education, for formation, for opening people's minds to reality around us and to helping them accept the reality of their own existence and their own lives, so that they're able to accept the existence and the reality of the lives of other people. The one thing that is very crucial for us when we talk about building bridges and moderation and tolerance and all of that, is to recognize that, there is a truth to be recognized about the human person, and that the human person is a created nature. Okay, in our createdness, we don't have perfection yet within us. It's something we aspire after, but we don't have it yet all within us. It just means that whatever reality we try to perceive, we don't perceive it in all its wholeness, in all its totality. And that is why it is possible to have some seeing this and some seeing that. So the recognition of our creatureliness or our created nature is so very crucial. This for me is what should open us to be tolerant and to accept other realities, because we recognize that we don't have perfection in any one of us. We have a bit of it and we're developing it, but we also need to recognize it in other people and other areas, so that that recognition opens us to the reality and the existence of others. This truth about the human person growing up is very crucial and very essential. If the same age bracket that you identify as young people, that would also, invariably or incidentally, also be the age bracket that people will identify as the area where people are most susceptible to ideologies, to radicalization, to all kinds of things. So it's so very important for formators and for teachers and for educationists of our young people at this place to enable them to see the truth of the reality of the human person, the truth about our world, the truth about reality itself, so that we don't close ourselves in a corner and make that corner represent all of reality for us. That leads us into a lot of difficulty and challenges.
Thank you. And His Excellency Gobash, you said, and you talk about this deal with Israel. I mean, for if you look from abroad, from a distance, peace in the Middle East, it looks like a conundrum, you know? I mean, we still remember the famous announcement of the deal of the century and what happened at the end. So how do you think that in this whole, framework of building bridges, is this status now of peace in the Middle East?
Well, I think what we did was precisely that, build one more bridge. And one of the things that we observed and leadership has observed over the last 70 years is that not speaking to the Israelis has not actually led to any positive outcome. Stonewalling, blocking, denying the existence of has not helped the Palestinians or the rest of the Arab world. And so we decided that there was a different approach, and it was one consistent with the way in which we deal with the rest of the world. And that was to open doors, to speak to the other side, without giving up our rights, or the rights of the Arabs and the Muslims, or the rights of the Palestinians. I mean, they're not for us to give up, but to create another platform in which we can all listen to each other, demonstrate that actually we don't need to live in hate, even if we have very, very important political differences, and to compartmentalize these different areas of activity. And it's an indication also that different parts of the Arab world have different imperatives. We are no longer very kind of one-dimensional societies and economies. We now have very dynamic economies, very complex societies, and we have a growing young population with aspirations, just as the Israelis do, and just as the Palestinian people have as well. And we want to demonstrate that we are taking care of our own while reaching out to the other.
Thank you so much. Okay. His Eminence, I remember, I mean, I love this institution of the Abrahamic family house. I remember when the Pope John Paul II wanted to go from Ur to Hebron, just to repeat the trip of Abraham, in history. So we were all in Ur. I think it was like 60 degrees in the shadow, but it was a fantastic experience. So how you could, reignite and revive this dream of two popes before in the present, in this Abrahamic family house?
In the first, I think the initiative calls for a lot of felicitations and congratulations on the part of everybody who just hears about and contemplates that idea and vision. It brings to mind, for example, a similar setup, not quite a place of worship, but a pyramid in Astana, in Kazakhstan, which is also a place of dialogue and conversation between different faiths. But on the other hand, talking about a place of worship, you probably recall that when this is probably on I say this on a very light note, not so serious. When for example, when President Erdogan entered the Hagia Sophia Basilica in Istanbul, the thing was he invited the Pope to come along and pray along together with them in that room. The house, the Abrahamic house that is being talked about is completely different from that. It's not an invitation to come to a place of worship of another faith, and it's a gesture. It's a gesture that for me goes beyond the thing of tolerance. It's a gesture of acceptance, and acceptance goes way beyond tolerance. Having a place already, the Omar, and the ambassador also, that in the Emirates, you have, the different places of worship of different faiths, but bring them all together under one roof. It's a sign of recognition, as it were, which is a sign of acceptance of the reality and the place of all of this, that these structures or these religions do serve the well-being of humanity and that they are worth having them together. Okay, so it's a gesture of acceptance, but it's also a gesture of a mission. Okay, it's a gesture of a mission that says, if, bringing all of you together here means we recognize in you something that can be done, something that is possible, and that this dialogue or bridge building that we're talking about is something that can be carried out, so that what is symbolized here locally can become the aspiration of the whole world and all the followers of your different religions. So that's why. So if I congratulate the Emirates for such a initiative or for such a project, it's because I recognize in that an expression of a symbol of acceptance or tolerance, but it's also an expression of a mission. What we can do here together, let's do all over the world, as it were, and build this, vision of coming together, to make religion serve the well-being and the common good of humanity.
Mm-hmm. Thank you so much. I mean, Ambassador Al-Suwaidi, I mean, how, from, on the ground, how can you be all-inclusive? I mean, talking about women, energy, business in this world. I mean, talking about, going to the ground and to the details of all these, general kind of intentions, pronouncements.
I think that's really at the heart of it, is how we try to create opportunities for future generations. In my experience, most people are just really looking to have a better life for their families, for their kids, to be able to have a good job, stable job, and to create a future opportunities for young people. And so in practical terms, the things that have to go alongside these conversations of interfaith dialogue and discussions of working together has to be that practical side of, well, how do we try to create opportunities to bring these people together to create new types of jobs, to new types of opportunities for different people, for young women, young men, and this is something that's really embodied in the UAE. We were discussing this a little bit, and I think this is where your question came from before this meeting. And in the UAE, we've been a country that has been dependent on oil and gas, on one type of energy, and we have taken that knowledge and expertise and gone on a journey to diversify our economy and to look at developing new opportunities for the young people that are in our country. And I see that the work that our leadership have done to promote tolerance and understanding between countries is part and parcel of that diversification, of having many people from different countries coming to our country. We're one of the few countries in the world that has a minister of happiness, for instance. Our leadership really have seen that you have to go beyond just talking about tolerance to fostering it and to nurturing it and to growing it. And so I feel that in the UAE, our leadership have really done a great job in creating the environment, promoting women in science, technology, and engineering. I can't pass without talking about our Mars mission, that yesterday we were excited to celebrate reaching Mars and going into orbit, where the team were majority women who were involved in the design and production of this project. And so these are just examples of the ways that the UAE is not just talking the talk, but is actually taking action, is taking steps to create opportunities for the world to come together, to work on things together, and to promote peace and harmony and economic prosperity in the world today.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. To our man in Dubai now, I mean, what are the quantitative advantages of delivering on the ground from the diplomatic, economic, and at the end even a moral point of view?
What, you're asking me for numbers? That's so unfair.
Just go for it.
Can you explain the question a little more?
Yes. That we are really here now on the going down, from the this inductive, system of
Yes.
and systematic, opening. So what are the advantages? I mean, not going quantitative in terms of money, but it's really from the economic and diplomatic, point of view. You have a lot of advantages. In going on with this. At the end of the day, in setting examples, in becoming a safe haven for whatever the things you are planning.
Yeah.
What are the advantages of this?
Well, the advantage is actually is that we become the center of a network. We become a very, very important location for many different people to come together. And I think, if you look at the logistics infrastructure that we have, the airline infrastructure, the airports, the ports themselves, it's remarkable because it keeps attracting people from all over the world. And people, we have a number, I can't remember how many billions of people within 4 hours of flight from here. But that allows us, again, to allow people from different parts of the world to connect with each other. I was speaking
of the world's population.
There you are, 1/3 of the world's. And the financial infrastructure has been a tremendous benefit to many countries as well. And I understand that for the sub-Saharan Africa, Dubai is actually a financial center in the way that London is a financial center. Many people will come from that area in order to do deals here, find the right legal and financial support, and then go back. So from that perspective, there's huge economic benefits. But it's also there's a kind of a cultural benefit because as we learn more about each other, our own youth becomes more equipped to deal with a world where things are changing all the time. Our kids are no longer surprised at difference or outsiders or new ideas. And it becomes a bit of a kind of a cauldron of clever things happening.
Mm-hmm. So from also an economic point of view, to build a bridge is much more, in economic terms, is much more better than to build up a wall.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you very much. Now, going back to Rome, we are now in the middle of also this narrative of and storytelling of this virus and COVID crisis, going into governments and going into this fighting in the European Union right now, and how His Eminence think that is going to be the near future?
The future.
And how to fight this short-sighted narrative dealing with
fighting this, is made very clear by Pope Francis right at the beginning. We can't fight this alone. This is not a period for lone rangers. Okay, it's not a period for lone rangers or people riding alone. This is a period for partnership, for multilateralism, and for solidarity and joint effort. Because as you know, the nature of this virus is such that as long as there's one individual in the world who still has the virus, the COVID, the rest of the world is not safe. So this is something that invites all of us to come together, to work together to eradicate this. Unfortunately, our experience with this has got a lot of challenges in this regard. Last year in March, on the 20th of March, Pope Francis asked our office here to create a commission, okay, to work on this virus in the world, and we decided to create 5 commissions. One commission was to maintain contact with the world outside, to find out how they're doing, what the experience with the virus is, what their challenges are, and how the Holy See might be able to lend their support and to help them deal with the virus. The second group was to explore the consequences of the impact of the virus, the pandemic on our economy, on our jobs, on food security, even national security and our health care. There's a research group that is working, ferociously to come up with whatever. Then there is another group that, since the Vatican is a state among other states, to see how the Vatican can engage in partnership, diplomatic relations, advocacy group to leverage one thing, a universal and inclusive access to the vaccine or to whatever therapies or cures we come out with for everybody, leaving the poor ones not behind. This is the one area of challenge, because as you know, the discovery of the virus is becoming nationalistic, okay? Nations who can afford it are now paying well, to the extent that currently even the European Union is beginning to lament having been left out and being, it's still struggling for the virus. And if the EU, with all its resources, is fighting such a battle, how much more can people in the Amazon, in the Congo, in Africa, Southeast Asia, fight for this? So it's so very important that we maintain a certain sense of inclusiveness in our therapies, our cures, and all the solutions that we're trying to formulate for this virus. Therefore, we're encouraging the different pharmaceutical companies. It's good to develop the vaccines, but let's also aim at alternative therapies and cures. It's my knowledge and understanding now that there is a firm that is also working on tablets, okay? Tablets that can also deal with this. And as you would agree, it's far easier to transport tablets than to transport vaccine jabs. And so ours is to expand the vision, okay, of a research for therapies and cures and all. So while we maintain an inclusive vision, our inclusiveness is not only for for access to the therapies, but it's also an inclusion for the development of the therapies themselves that can help us get out of this. So if your question is, can we ever get out of this and pray for the future? Well, Pope Francis charges us to do that. He charges us to prepare the future. And be careful, he doesn't say prepare for the future. He tells us to prepare the future, which means that the pandemic has exposed a lot of other social inequalities and pandemics. Social inequality, racism, poor access to healthcare, and all of these. So prepare the future means prepare for a future without these defects of society, without these things which diminish the dignity of people, and anything that creates human dignity deficiency has to be eradicated so that all men can have access to what it takes to make us all live fulfilling lives on this earth.
And whoever wants to answer, this last 4 years in the United States, we had like this kind of going back to the 1920s, 100 years ago, a policy of splendid isolation. Now looks like, and that president talked a lot about walls. Now, with this kind of announced re-engagement, is going to be positive for this narrative of work in the future, as you just said, His Eminence, and whoever wants to answer me?
Angela,
go ahead, please.
May I jump in here? I just wanted to sort of add a personal experience sort of related to what Cardinal Turkson was talking about how these interfaith dialogues can really help to solve some of the challenges you mentioned, especially related to COVID. One example we had with the UAE is when the COVID crisis began, there was a lot of shortage of PPE and medical supplies and items like that were really needed by countries to deal with the crisis. And the UAE was very active in this area in taking some of our surpluses and sending them to different countries around the world. And one of the projects we worked on was with the Vatican. I know because my office helped to work on that, and where we helped to send the Vatican sent us a request to help send PPE to people in the Amazon in Peru to help with their COVID situation. And so working together with the Vatican, we sent supplies to Peru. So there is like a perfect example of how the dialogue between UAE and the Vatican, which started about an interfaith dialogue, really had benefits that were broader than just the interfaith discussion, and brought together sort of non-traditional partners to solve a crisis that we all faced. So sorry to jump in there.
No, that's great.
For sure, that's very important, because I mean, I think that if you have not only a bilateral experience, we are talking about a multilateral now, which is the place, and then you also have the possibility, because you are a very rich gas and oil country, so it's like kind of having a whole framework for activities and jumping into the action. But I was asking before, because it looks like maybe the atmosphere, apart from the fact that we're in this middle of this horrible crisis, opens up in this new kind of environment in political terms. Coming from the other side of the Atlantic, as we are now here, you know. I mean, it could be, His Excellency Govash, important to have this new re-engagement policy instead of isolation, kind of as we had in the previous years?
Well, thank you very much for that very difficult question.
2 minutes.
We are enthusiasts for all U.S. policy, if that's what you mean, and we're it's not for us to judge the way the U.S. administrations want to take the world. What we do know is that we will work with whoever is in the White House. And what we also do know is that we have our values, and we will always try to express them as clearly as possible to our partners in the U.S. Our behavior in the region has been always one of trying to cooperate, trying to reach out to friends and enemies, and to try to break down those barriers. Because our focus is, rather than on increased power across the region, it's actually wanting to see the region flourish. And so that's our direct concern. That's why we reach out to the Russians and to the Chinese and to the Indians, Pakistanis, and to the Israelis and to the Americans. It's all so that, because there are so many different parties involved, it's essential that everybody understands that there is a different option for the Arab and the Muslim world. That actually, the boundaries that have been set up can come down, and that we can actually cooperate with each other and work with each other and all prosper in the same environment. And it isn't just a question of words. We've demonstrated how the Emirates, as 7 different Emirates, could prosper together. We trade with Iran and Pakistan and India and China. China, I think, is our biggest trading partner at the moment. And again, it comes back to the example. So we do recognize that there are boundaries that have to be set up in certain instances. And COVID has been a brilliant example of the necessity to control population movements between different areas. But that's just a fact of medical health. It isn't a moral position, I think, and it's not an ethical position, but it's a reflection of reality. So we recognize that. On the other hand, we also look forward to a world where these boundaries come down, the walls come down.
And maybe talking about the peace in the Middle East is very, general. But now that you have this platform of dialogue, of bridges, of Abrahamic family, do you think that it could be possible to start talking about peace at least in the region, in your region?
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, not all conflict in the region is religiously based. Many of the conflicts are around power, around water, around energy, around geopolitical questions that then, and some of the players use religion to provoke emotion. And so, if we're open and honest about these things, maybe we'll be able to move beyond the kind of stereotype that it has to be only interfaith dialogue. There are many different kinds of dialogue that we need to have. We need to, again, compartmentalize these things.
Of course, thank you. And how do you prospect in the term and in the medium term this project you have? And what do you think could be the consequence for as an example for other places? If it is, as you plan the bridge of the Abrahamic family you are building now in the Emirates?
It's to me? Who?
Yes. Sorry. His Eminence the Cardinal Carson. I mean, yes. It's. I'm just. Please, trying to ask.
No. I thought since you said here.
Envision the success of this project. You are.
As I said a little bit before, I think the initiative and the vision of developing a facility like this, by contrast with what we have in Kazakhstan, Astana, of dialogue and discussion, this goes one step further. This goes one step further in the sense that it's a place of worship, recognizing that people come to commune with God, to worship Him, so it's a place not only of discussion, place also of nurturing spirituality, okay, or open oneself up to the divine and all of that. And this is very crucial. The thing about fraternity, which Pope Francis and Sheikh Tayyip, signed out there, requires a lot. Internal spirituality. When we not form from within, we cannot live, accordingly outside. So the big challenge and the big call for the invitation to be bridge builders and all of that requires a deep down inner transformation. Okay, a deep discovery of our own spiritual selves and nature and how we respond to God, our own selves, to be able to imitate God, as it were, become gods on earth. If we need to be divine-like on earth, making the world or the earth a happy home for everybody, then we need to aspire to be also God-like, okay, in what we do. So this is why the initiative of having the three faiths, together on the one as a place of worship, invites us first to ask oneself, when we gather there, are we praying to the same God? And the likelihood and the possibility that we pray to the same God already disposes us a lot to open up to each other. If it's the same God that we're praying to, then it minimizes in a way even the differences that we have here on earth. Okay, recognize what it is. And this, your question you put in the first about United States is over. I don't want to return to it, but for me, for me, this is why religions have a very important mission for unity of mankind. It's not only because of the fraternity, universal fraternity celebrated, but religions have a very crucial basic mission for the unity of the human race, which no other institution on the earth can have. Because in what religions profess, I can illustrate in so very many ways, but you see, because for people of faith, what we believe in is God, all right? And after God, we don't have religion. After God, what we have is a human person. And then from the human person, we have religion. Okay, so religion is not the first thing created by God. It is a human person. And the human person expresses its relationship with God in religion. Therefore, every religion truly, while it renders worship to God, must promote the well-being of the human person. When then we have a situation where religion also becomes the basis for creating differentiated growth, differentiated development, leaving some behind, leaving some out there, creating bridges and all of that, then we betrayed religion. Especially in a country which makes religion its basis. In God we trust. How can our trust in God still generate a structure that makes such differences exist so that, human person, whatever. So it's so very important that we learn to witness and make our religion come alive in our policies and what we do. So the gesture in the Emirates with the three groups coming, it's an instance of making our faith and religion come alive, demonstrating how it invites us to be open to each other and how it invites us to, to work together to live our unity. And this must be a message that goes out to the rest of the world.
Mm-hmm. Well, I remember that I studied in the school that religion in the word etymologically is coming from Latin, and is coming from religare, which means relation with. Mm-hmm. So it's everything is basically in the word. Thank you so much. We have less than 10 minutes left. So if you agree with me and you are for it, we can close each one of you with a close statement. If just kind of summarizing up the whole conversation, and we start with the writer, diplomat, and thinker Omar Gobash, if you agree.
Can I disagree?
No. Please, dictators.
If we start with me, then it'll be a very short summing up because.
No, I mean as you prefer.
No, thank you very much. I'm really pleased that we were able to have this discussion. It really is incredibly important that when we talk about radicalization, which is where I think our interest in tolerance really crystallized. It's the radicalization of young men, young women. It's incredibly important to be able to say, not just that we're against this, but that we're actually for something. And it's taken a very long time. And I marked the starting date as September 11th. That's when it became very clear to us that there was a problem in our part of the world, and there was an anger and a violence and an aggression that was being channeled through our religion. And it took a long time to come to these kind of big political and ethical decisions that we're going to start changing the direction of our societies and our economies, because the economy is also a very important part of this, and to really create a set of opportunities for young people, to give them something to actually aspire to and to believe in and actually in the end do. And so that's why tolerance, the idea of tolerance, at least in the way it's practiced in the Emirates, comes out of a real concern for what happens in a vacuum. And in that vacuum, it really was the kind of radicalization that took root. It's going to take a very long time to see the fruits of this push for tolerance, but I see leadership, I see this country moving forward with really strong, powerful steps that are really courageous right across the region. And I think we're on the right track.
Thank you so much. His Excellency Al-Suwaidi, I mean, what in terms of, for your close statement, plans for this, when we come out from this crisis, what we could learn in terms of planning the future in a positive or, let's say, optimistic brackets way?
Well, I think that the imperative there is that we have to learn or take away some lessons from this crisis. I participated in a lot of workshops and discussions where we were aware of this danger of a crisis like that of COVID. We see a lot of crises, be they climate change issues, be they related to migration. There are a lot of potential pressures that lead to crises like this. And it's important that we work together as a global community. And as His Excellency Omar pointed out, it's about what are we for? It's about developing some sort of positive ideas that are moving forward. And what I feel very proud about in representing my country is that our leadership have taken very brave steps, be that in making outreach or agreements with Israel or things like the Abrahamic Accords, or on things like embracing renewable energy or trying to diversify the economy and develop new opportunities for young people in non-traditional sectors that we're not used to. And so our country is a country that is really taking a leadership role. We're not telling people that they have to be like us, but we're saying, let's work together. Let's get as many people connected and working together and come up with some solutions that tackle the many challenges that we face today.
Thank you so much. And His Eminence Cardinal Turkson, what in your opinion could be like a kind of roadmap to come out from this global moment of discomfort, of kind of this poor way of being general when you are so close up with problems at your place, in your doorstep?
Well, the roadmap, I think, is what the Holy Father and the sake of the Al-Aqsa indicated to all of us, all of humanity, when they did when they met 2 years ago, as it were in 2019. The roadmap is the discovery of the fraternity of the human race, that we all belong together, that we share a common destiny, that we live our lives in wombs, as it were, which are universal. Not only and this in a very real way. It's interesting. I don't think I want to go into any teach anybody Greek or Hebrew or anything here. But the Greek word for brother is adelphos, and that means from the womb. So brothers and sisters are considered to be from the same womb. And if they are from the same womb, then it means they share the same nature, they share the same dignity. So brothers and sisters, you don't have one brother who has more dignity than the other. So the sense of brotherhood invites us to consider that which we have and share in common. And that which we have and share in common is the engine that moves and propels us to commit to our own common well-being. So the roadmap is in our fraternity. That invites us to come together, to work together, build bridges, encounter each other, dialogue, and talk to each other, fashion links and whatever, partnership, multilateralism, and all of that, because we are essentially one. And despite the variations and the differences, we need to come together. So fraternity and hopefulness. I think everything that has brought us to this conversation, especially with the crucial symbol of this house for the true Abrahamic faith, is to launch a message of hope. Okay, and the message of hope always invites us to look at the future. And as Pope Benedict would say, to look at the future is always to look at God. And it is to learn to hold on to the hand of God, to do what humanly is impossible to do. We people of faith, okay, so if we're speaking with it, we say, Inshallah. Okay, so with the help of God. Christians will say, by the grace of God. So we know that with the help of God, we can do a lot of things. And that's why this symbol we contemplate and talk about today becomes a symbol of hope for all of us, with the help of God, to be able to do what otherwise is not considered possible. And that is to make the world a better place for all of us, for the children, the future generation you talked about, and for those living in now, and to be able to live this world as a livable space for the world who will come after us. So, ecologically, let's prepare for the climate summit that is coming up in Glasgow and commit to improving upon the world. Thank God the United States under Biden is coming on board. And so we hope we can improve upon the earth and be a better place for us now and for those who will come after us, a solidarity for the future generation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We have been given an hour, and this is sharply an hour. So we are not in Germany, we are in Spain. Excellency, the ambassador in Spain. So thank you so much for this instructive and rich conversation. I really enjoy it. I hope everybody too. And thanks so much to His Excellency Omar Gobash.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. To His Eminence, the Cardinal Turkson, has been a great.
Thanks.
And our host, the ambassador in Madrid, His Excellency Al-Suwaidi. Thank you so much, and good afternoon, everybody from Madrid.
Thanks for the invitation.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Have a great day, you all.
Likewise.
Same.
Thank you.
Grazie.
Okay, thanks.